In this video, I'm going to show you how I wire this electrical panel. Wait till the end to see how it turns out. So first things first, I am not an electrician, so let's make that super clear. I'm just a regular dude who's going to wire his shop. I'm going to show you how a normal guy who's not an electrician can wire this very intimidating looking panel behind me. Here's what our panel looks like. This panel is somewhat intimidating. However, if we break it down, use some common sense, and watch a ton of YouTube videos, we should be able to get this figured out. I'm willing to take on a project like this because this isn't the first time I've done this. I have done other 200 amp services in a building similar to this, and I passed 4 different inspections then, and I've already started with the inspection process on this. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on here. So as you can see, this is our main and only panel coming into the building. On the other side of these wires, it's hooked to the main panel at the house. I'm not going to go into that. That, if anybody's interested, we can chat about it. But right now, all we need to worry about is we've got our main conductors in the building. So from that point, the box I bought, it's a 200 amp box with lots of spaces to put breakers. Breakers are obviously these. There's different ones that serve different purposes. We'll get to those here in a little bit. Basically, back here is all of our power. Over here on each side are our neutrals. Over here is a grounding strap, or they call them a bus. Our main wires come up into the panel and they plug in here and they plug in here. This is our main disconnect. So when I shut this off, there is no power to anything in this box. These are still live, however. The way these are coming in, we've got 2 hots, which is this thick one, this thick one. This one with the yellow stripe is a neutral. And this black one over here, the smallest one, is a ground from the pole or the main panel. Technically, this would be considered a sub panel. The reason why is we are not bonding the box, neutral, and ground together. They are separate. There's a little green screw that comes with these boxes that will tie various things in between the box, the ground, and the neutral. For this application, because it's a sub panel, we're not doing that. So there is no green screw connecting our neutrals to our grounds. They are separate. That's important. So as we look, we've got wires coming out from all over the place. And if you want to see how they're routed throughout the building, go check out some of my other videos where I just kind of show where they're at throughout the shop. So we've got all kinds of different wires here, and we kind of need to know what's going on with them. So the first thing I'll tell you, we've got 3 different wires here. A white one, a yellow one, and a real big black one. They're all the same as far as how they're set up. There's 2 different numbers we're going to talk about as far as this is concerned. When you're starting to do your research to figure out what you need, you're going to hear terms like 14.2 or 12.2. What this means, it's once you get your head wrapped around it, it's really not that difficult. The first number, the 12 or the 14, it could be a 10, it could be a 16. Typically, what we're going to talk about, though, is the 12 and the 14. And what that number represents is the thickness or the gauge of the wire. So if we look here at this black and this white wire, there's different thicknesses. If we bring over these 2, and I don't know if you can see it there, this one's thicker than this one, which is what that first number represents. So in this case, it's a 14 gauge wire. In this case, it's a 12 gauge. Some more terminology is when they're wrapped like this is called Romex. I think that might be a brand, but this is what people call it. They call it yellow Romex, white Romex, whatever. So the first number, the 14, the 12, in a 14.2 or a 12.2 represents the thickness of the wire. Now, you notice I said another wire, 2. Sometimes there could be a 12.3, there could be a 14.2, a 14.3. The second number represents how many wires are in here. The important thing to really grasp here is that doesn't include that copper ground wire. It is only the insulated wires. If this was a 13-3, there would be a third insulated wire, so there'd technically be 4 wires in there. Everything we're running only has 2 wires plus the copper ground that doesn't count in that number. You look here, 14-2, it says right on the wire. Another thing that's kind of interesting is they also have a manufacture date. There's some other information here. You've got voltage. The ones that we need to be concerned about for this purpose is the 14-2, or on this one, it's going to say 12-2. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. And where that's going to come into importance is how we set this up and what we kind of do. So let's get into this, and we will check and see kind of what the very first step is. While you're running your wires, you don't even have to have your panel up. What's really, really important is that we notate and mark what wire is what, or which wire is which. If we don't, it's going to create a whole lot of headache that we don't want. So we need to mark what wire goes where. So if you look here, you can see northwest garage outlet. I already know, based on the way my building's set up, where that particular circuit is. By the way, a circuit or a home run is going to be this going to one outlet. From that outlet, you can go from other ones to other ones to other ones, depending on the situation, which for today, we're not going to worry about that. So the first thing we need to do is we need to figure out how we're going to run these wires in here. A few videos back, I had talked about doing something up here and bringing them through and down through the top. I've since changed my mind. By me, I mean the builder. He came up with a much better idea. And so we've got these holes here. Most likely your setup may not be this way. There are several holes throughout these boxes. There's a whole ton of these little ones down here. There's holes on the bottom. There's holes here. All these are called knockouts. And they're real easy to get out. You just stick a screwdriver or something in there, pry them out to the size you want. I've already started on these knockouts because these 2 knockouts are where I'm going to run my wire through. Now there's a few important things we got to consider with this, and I'll explain that as I finish working on this. The thing with these are the holes aren't big enough for what I'm going to do, and I'm going to show you that in just a minute. So as you can see here with these holes, what I'm going to do is I got to open the holes up just a little bit because I didn't have a big enough hole saw, but I'm going to run just this little piece of pipe through there. And this is where the wires are going to go on each one of these holes. There are probably a gazillion different ways of doing this. I'm just showing you how I'm doing this. Later on down the road, I'll show you how we use conduit through here. There's different connectors that go through here to bring wires in. This is just what I kind of came up with. I know it's going to meet code, and so things don't have to be exactly a certain way, at least in my book. The first thing I'm going to do is try and open up this hole just a little bit. I got my hole saw. This was a $15 kit at the local store. No big deal, but it's just wide enough for that pipe to go through. This is the part I'm putting through the 2x4, and I wanted to kind of show how I'm setting it up because I don't think I'm going to be able to get the camera in there very well. So the first thing I'm going to do is put this locking ring on, and I'm going to kind of choke it up there on the pipe. Then what I'm going to do is I got to come up with a way to get this to connect. This piece here is what's going to hold those wires in place behind the panel. So what I got is this coupler here. Everything here is 2-inch. So what I'm going to do is slide this on, or spin this on. I don't want to go too far, but yet I want to go far enough. And I'm just going to kind of guess. And what I'm going to do is try and set these up the same way for both of them so that everything kind of looks uniform and nice when it's done. Now I'm going to screw this guy on. This one's got a locking nut on it as well, but I'm going to back that up all the way because I'm going to be able to just kind of squeeze that on like that. So that's what's going to be coming in panel side, wire side. The fitting will come in like this through the panel. The panel will sit, you know, in here somewhere. Then I'm going to put this other locking ring on. And then I'll put my protective coupler deal here on. So that's the way it's going to be set up in the panel and through the wall. I just wanted to kind of show that. Once everything's in, I'm going to pinch the wires down with that. So that'll be the setup right there. Now we've got our conduit, so to speak, through both the box and the wood. And what we're going to do is bring all this garbly goop and this, we're going to run it through each one of these. Obviously this side will go through here, this side will go through there. The way I'm wiring this is I've run all this stuff through the walls, and down the road I'm going to use some of these knockouts on the side for conduit. And we'll look at that some other day. That's not really relevant for right this second. So let's go ahead and run all of our wire through our newly installed conduit. This part's pretty basic, but I'm going to show it to you anyway. So basically, we're going to take our wires, and if they're somewhat straight, I think that's going to help. But we're all set to run everything in there. So what I'm going to do is start with this big one, which, by the way, this big one is 220. I didn't mention that earlier, but it's the same wire as far as that second number, so it's a 2. And I don't remember what gauge this is. Oh, so this one's a 6'2". The difference is the thickness of the wire, but there's still only 2 main conductors, a power and a neutral. Then we got our ground wire in there too. So this one I'm going to run first. Then we'll go ahead and run maybe just a couple of these 12-2s at a time, make it go a little quicker. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm not going to quite pull them all tight until I get most of them in there, just because I think I might run into some issues if I were to do it that way. So I'll just get kind of most of it, and then we'll finish wrapping, pulling everything through all the way once we get a few more in. As you can see, we've got all of our conductors run through the panel. Never mind this stuff, that's temporary for builders and outlets. Don't look at that even. But we've got all of our wires run through our box. From this point, what we need to do is figure out which ones we want on this side, which ones we want on this side. Another thing I need to do is get another ground strap. As you can see, we've got the rest of our wiring through our box, up here and over here. Now, from here, what we can do is decide, do we want this bank of wires to run to this side? Do we want them to run straight down? And part of the reason why we need to kind of figure this out is because we know that we're going to have a whole bunch of things coming into these knockouts on the side. So I don't want to clutter up this. I'd like it to be somewhat even or symmetrical. So some of these are going to have to go over here. I might rough guess where I want this stuff coming in. But as I'm saying that, all I got to do is route the wires around there. It just won't look as good. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But let's not worry about all that now. We're just going to get these in. I've got to run to the store, get another ground strap, because obviously we need one over here, or a ground bus. And I'm going to go run and do that. We'll come back and get this thing looking pretty. Some things to consider when talking about an electrical panel is the brand. So whether it's GE, Square D, ABCDEFG, whatever your brand is, whatever the manufacturer is of your panel, you need to use the same brand components. And that is whether it's a breaker, whether it's what we're getting ready to install here, a ground strap, or they're calling it a bar, a ground bar. Whatever that component is, it's recommended that you use the same one. Now, something like this is probably not a big deal, but I can tell you that these breakers certainly are. The first thing I'm going to do is, like I did on this side, I'm going to mirror that on here and put my ground bar in. To put these in, real simple, there's 3 different holes, 2 different screws. If you line it up, it'll fit to a point. And again, I'm just going to mirror it from that side. So to do this, you just line up 2 of the 3 holes with these pre-drilled and tapped holes over on the side. So now we've got a grounding bar on that side. Some tools that you might need are screwdrivers, razor blade, some just basic stuff that most people probably have. And if you're doing something like this yourself, you darn sure should have. So nothing too critical, nothing too crazy. Just make sure you've kind of got the basics. Now, one of the things that we really need to start considering is the layout. Where do we want our bigger breakers? Do we want them up top or down low? Another thing that I think I forgot to mention is the location of your main cutoff. This can go either way, which is why mine's at the bottom, because with the length of wire that I had left myself coming out of the main utility, this was the best way to do it, and I don't mind it being on the bottom one bit. So now we just kind of got to decide, how do we want to run each and every circuit. I think what I'm going to start with is figuring out which circuits use a regular breaker. We're going to get into breakers in a minute, but for right now, I'm just going to decide which of these wires are going to a regular breaker, and we'll start by using those first. So some ones that I'm aware of that I know are going to be on a regular breaker is the bathroom, any and all outlets. So what I'm talking about right now is the different types of breakers we're going to use are 15 amp and 20 amp. I'm not going to go into what amperage is and voltage and all that. That's something that, go ahead, and if you don't understand that stuff, do your research. If you're at this part, you should know at least, or have an idea of what that means. Figure out our amperages and which circuit's running which amperage. The yellow ones are all going to be running 20 amp, and the white ones are going to be running 15 amp. The other thing that we need to take into consideration is the type of breaker we're going to use. So code is now requiring something called a ground fault breaker somewhere in your system. One option is to have a ground fault breaker. Another option is to have a ground fault receptacle or outlet. So I did some math and I did some figuring on which direction I was going to go. The outlets are $20 a piece. The breakers are somewhere between 55 and 60. So you'll have to do the math and figure out how you want to set your system up. So the difference between the 2 different breakers is this one is a 20 amp traditional breaker. If there's a short or something like that, it will trip the breaker. This one is a ground fault breaker, and you can see it's got the reset. And on the back, it's got 2 metal clips, whereas the regular one just has the one. The second one on the ground breaker goes to the neutral. I'm not going to get too hung up in this because this is more of how to set up a panel, but that's just a quick difference between the two. Code will dictate when you use this and when you use this. The ones that I'm using that don't have the ground fault in the breaker, these are about $6. These are 55 or 60. I'm going to use a ground fault at the outlet. I'll talk about that later on. So I think what I'm going to do first is use up the top spaces for my regular breakers. Then when we've used up all those-ish, then I'm going to go to the ground fault. So I'm going to set this to the side, and I'm going to worry about this and up there, and I'll put that guy up there for now. I know because I'm using ground fault outlets at every single outlet in my shop, I don't need a second one for any of my outlets anywhere in here, because I will do that down the line a little bit. So any of these ones that I marked, I've got a northwest corner, I've got a bathroom, The garage door is going to have a ground fault in the panel. This one is not marked, so I think I know which one that is. Okay, this one's the northwest, so here's another one. Another one. This one is, but we're not, well, that one is not. Garage door is not. This one is not. This one is not. This one is a mystery. Okay, so I've got my wires separated as far as which one I'm going to do with what. I've got 4 circuits, 4 wires that I'm going to wire with a regular breaker. So we're going to focus on those 4 right now on our right side of our panel. Before you get started on this, something I should have talked about at the very, very beginning, we don't want this thing energized at all. There should be no power. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the entire box right there. Hopefully you can still see me. More importantly, hopefully you can see the box. So this is the way we're going to work. I've got a light over here, but you do not want power to this, and you need to double check it with a multimeter or some kind of a device to confirm you don't have power to your box because you don't want to get electrocuted. Enough about that. Let's keep working. So now that I've got my first 4 circuits identified, I'm going to run them from the top down. So what we need to do is how I've got them labeled. I've got a bathroom, a southwest garage door outlet, a northwest corner outlet, and down here I've got a northwest garage outlet. We need to keep these figured out so we can mark the panel and know which circuit goes where. The only one that we absolutely need to know about is the black insulated wire. So that's going to be our main source of electricity. The white one, or neutral, those don't matter. It can go anywhere on our neutral bar. And the grounds also don't matter, the solid copper ones, because those can go anywhere in our bar. So the first thing we're going to do is we need to pull some of our insulation off of our wire here. So to do that, and I don't know that I guess I just don't know if there's an exact location up here that you're supposed to do that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my utility knife and I'm going to score the yellow sheathing in the middle. The most important thing here is you don't want to score any of the insulation on the 2 wires, the black and the white wire. So I am going to go to about that point, and now we can start pulling our insulation off. And what I'm going to do down here on the very bottom is cut that off, and I'm going to pull my marked part of sheathing off. And before I go do anything, because I tend to get a little ahead of myself sometimes, I'm going to separate each one of these wires, all 3 of them, just like that. And before I go anywhere or do anything, again, the black wire, or hot wire, our main electrical wire in our kit here, I'm going to put this on there, and I'm going to put that up like that. Now I've got it marked. As far as these 2, it does not matter. I'm going to make them go away and do them individually here after I get all of the rest of my sheathing off the wires that I need to finish installing. So I'm going to reach up here, being careful not to cut myself or any wires, and I'm going to cut the rest of that sheathing off. And now I'm ready to go on to the next one. We're going to repeat this process 3 more times for the 3 circuits that I've pulled separately from these other guys. Right now we're only wiring our 20 amp regular circuit breaker. I'm going to push these wires out of my way for a minute. Now I'm going to go to the next one. So same spot-ish. I'm going to come up here. I'm going to put my razor blade down the middle. I'll zoom in on a couple of these so you can really see. Again, if you go off like that, just come right back up, not a big deal. And then go in the middle, keep scoring it. They do make different tools to do this. You can go ahead and get those at whatever store you're buying your material from, various insulation strippers and what have you. I just like this. That's what I found to be the most convenient. So again, I'm going to come back here, cut my marking off. I'm going to pull that off my wires. This one's a little bit long because I went back when I wrote it, so I'm going to cut some of that off. And again, I'm going to go straight to that black wire, separate it from the other ones. Put this back on, curl my wire, and boom. Now I can go back. I'm going to remove. These come with some cardboard paper kind of stuff that you don't need in your panel. I'm going to come back here, going to cut it again. Now I'm going to go on to the next one. All right, so we've got 2 of the 4 out of the done, marked and stripped. I'm going to put those back. Now I'm going to go to this one, same thing. Here's a tech tip. This would make a horrendous mess at my feet. So what I'm doing is I brought a trash can over, and I know it sounds easy enough, but it just makes sense to me. I'm going to throw stuff away as I'm doing it because I don't want this big pile of mess here to have to clean up and add more work. One way you can do this, if you want to play it safe and depending on how you want to route it, you can come out with your wires and bend them in, which you'll see here shortly, or you can go down so you have extra wire and then come back up. There's a lot of different ways. I've even seen them where they come and go all the way around the box to the other side. That's totally up to you. What I would do, I would Google some different pictures of boxes and go the style you like, whatever makes the most sense to you. Really, if you were going to be super particular, I would have cut all my wires a little bit longer so I would have that option. But I'm not too worried about it because this box won't be anywhere near full when we're done, and we're going to be plumbing in a whole bunch of other stuff down the road. So I'm not too worried about it. We've got our 4 powers or 4 hots. Again, I'm not using fancy terminology here. Neutral's white. I would just remember that. Copper's ground. Just remember that. So now I'm going to go ahead and put all my neutrals together, separate them, and now I've got my grounds, the copper ones. So I've got all my wires separated. And if you're wondering why all my wires look like some crazy lady's hairdo, all kind of all over the place, it's because I got this all put together and I didn't like it. So I'm doing it just a little bit different now. So again, I'm going to start with my grounds. And then in the hopes that this is going to look good, we're going to start with that one. And we're just going to keep going down the lines with these. I'm going to try and straighten them because I got them a little bit goofy. And the other thing is I am going to have to cut some of these because when I did it the first time, like I said, I didn't like the way it turned out. So I'm not going to be having something here that isn't the way I want it. This is going to be somewhat decent, hopefully. And actually on this one, I'm going to put 2 in 1. I think it'll look better that way. And I'll do that all the way down. Happy little ground wires. Happy little ground wires.
Down the street with your red lips and funky beat, you better hold your head up to the sky. I'm gonna roll with you till the day I die. racing straight ahead. No man can do like I can. I'm the queen of the land. Haters gonna hate. Won't be sorry now. Shoot me down, but I'll rise again. I'm laying down the law, and you've been served. 1 by 1 billion by billion, been holding up half the sky. Raise your hand if you're ready and willing. If you know it's time. Time for a girl on time.
So now I've got all my ground wires installed here. I'm going to tuck them back just a little bit, kind of get them in this gutter that we've been talking about. Just kind of get them out of the way. It doesn't have to be perfect, but again, I want this to be presentable and decent. Not perfect, just decent. All right, so that I'm pretty happy with. Takes all the grounds and that stuff, kind of gets them out of the way. So the next thing we're going to do is our neutrals. So let's get those pulled down. Like I said before, I've already separated them. So here we go. And again, these, the grounds and neutrals, it does not matter where they go, except there is a caveat to this. That's going to be the ground fault. Each ground fault has to have the appropriate neutral to that breaker. So what I'll do is I'm going to go in here and tie the ones that I know need ground faults, pull those ones, put them separate again, and then we'll get back to just running the regular ones. I'll leave those neutral wires last out of this bunch just because we're going to be involved in setting up the breaker. And I might even hook these ones up. We'll just see how it goes. We'll see how this kind of looks and how it's kind of coming together. So hang tight, I'm going to get working on that. So now I've got everything separated the way I want it to as far as kind of final wiring here. So the first thing I'm going to do is, again, neutrals. We've already got all of our grounds. Those don't matter one single bit. These neutrals don't matter where they go. The other ones do because they're ground fault protected. These are just regular breakers. The ground fault protection device is going to be on the other end where the outlet is, or in the outlet. So for these, there's 5 here, 5 circuits. I'm going to separate the hots from the neutrals. And I'm just going to go ahead and start wiring all these neutrals in here, one at a time. 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. When you're doing this, what I do is I bring it down to about where I want it and kind of push it back in like that. And then I've got a little bit of room here. So I'm going to bring in my side cutters, cut this where I want it, and then strip it and put it in its spot. So as I'm going through, I'm just kind of keeping everything neat, symmetrical, kind of the same somewhat distance apart. I just want it to look good. I want it to look somewhat professional, even though I'm not an electrician. I want to be proud of this. The only person in the world that, one, will care, or two, see it is probably the inspector. Builders might check it out, which, that's cool, but really, nobody's going to see this, and that's okay because I'm doing it right. So now we've got our 5 neutrals for our 5 regular breakers. So we've got some different options on how we can go. I think what I'll do is I'm going to go grab the cover, or you could grab a notepad. You can do this a bunch of different ways, but I want to make sure I know which circuit is going where. And again, we've got them marked already, stripped and all that. So now we're going to come in with our breakers. We'll put the appropriate one on, after it's marked, cut it to length, put it in, click, 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 all the way down until we're ready for our GFCI breakers. Again, ground fault interrupters, or GFI, or ground fault something or another, whatever. But this is what we're doing. So I'm going to go and get, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go get a piece of paper so I can write this down and make it look pretty. All right, so the first two out of here, so I've got a regular outlet here. I've got another outlet. Don't mind my markings, you mark them however you want. That's just so I know where they are and all that. But the two that I'm going to start with is, I kind of marked them different, but they mean the same thing. I've got that upstairs. Nope, I'm sorry. And then for the bathroom downstairs. So I'm going to put those ones in first. So same kind of thing. We'll come down here. And I know that that breaker is going to go right here. Focus, right here. So what I'll do is I'm going to go actually grab a breaker, see where it is, get everything bent up and do that. So just to kind of get everything lined up, I'm going to put two breakers in. And I'm sure professional electricians will cringe because they're wondering why the heck I'm doing it this way, but I'm not a professional. So right about there looks like a good spot to cut it. So right about here, kind of just measure in a bit. I'm going to give this one a little extra. And then the next one will be about the same thing, maybe a little bit longer to put it back in that gutter a little bit. So now I'm going to pull my breakers. I'm going to strip my wires. Grab my breakers again. So I'm going to go ahead and get this buddy wired up here. So this is the bathroom breaker. You can see that. That one's the bathroom breaker. And I'm going to snug her down. Give it the old tug test. And I'm going to install this one. Just like that. And then I'm going to straighten up my wire, make it look nice. Now I'm going to go to the next one. And I don't know why, but if this was a different style and you had a loop, you'd want the loop to go on that side. So that's why I'm putting my wire on the lower part there. Just being silly, I'm sure. All right, so there we've got two started. I'm going to just straighten these up just a tickle. About like that. Now I'm going to go and do the other three. I'll get those done to give you a look. So here we've got all 5 regular circuit breakers in on that side. I think that looks okay. It isn't perfect, but it does look okay. So now we're going to get the rest of these and these. So you say, well, how the heck do I know which one's which? While you're doing this, write everything down. So this one's breaker number 1, that'd be the top one. Next one's the second, so on and so forth. And it just says what each one is. So now I'll go to 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever for the rest. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side. It might be numbered different on the panel cover. We'll address that later as long as we know which one is which. So now we are going to install one of these guys. These are a little bit different, not a whole lot, but different enough. You can see they're about twice as long, or however you want to look at it, wide as the other ones. But they've got two screws to put in some different wires. So this one's going to be set up like an outlet as far as color matching, where the gold color or copper color, bronze color is going to be our hot, and the silver color is going to be our neutral. The neutral must go on here. On this side, this part of this ground fault breaker goes on our ground bar right there, and this one goes on the regular power part. So that's what that looks like, and I'll go ahead and show you how to hook this one up. So this one's going to be the same way I set this first one up. I'm going to put it in. And I'm just going to kind of measure where I want each wire to go. And I'm going to cut. I suppose you could keep that on there when you go and put these in, but for this purpose, I am going to do it this way. Give it the old tug test. Put our power in there. Well, let's go ahead and clamp her in. All right, now that we got that screwed in, I'm going to just kind of tuck these wires back a little bit. Make it look somewhat presentable. Spend as much time as you feel like it with that. That is up to you. And I'll probably come back at the end and just tune everything up. So that's how you install a ground fault breaker. Now I'm going to do the other ones. Looks like we've got 3 more, and then I'll show you what she looks like. Here we go. So I got all of the right side wires run and wired. If you wanted to, come up here and do some zip tying or, whatever, you certainly could. Nothing says you can't. I even kind of snipped all these just so they're even and look good. But this is kind of what I've got, and I like it. I think that's going to be just fine. It's not the most organized one on the planet, but it definitely will function and does its job. So I'm going to go ahead and do this side now, and then we will show what it looks like when it's all completed. Here's the completed electrical panel. Now, when I say completed, I'm definitely going to be adding some things, but for now, that's what I need for inspection. So, I think this is going to work out okay. I've tested every single circuit and everything works as it should. So here it is, all done. I don't think it turned out too bad. Really, it was not that difficult. I think anybody can kind of get this done. If you've got any questions on this, as usual, don't hesitate to holler. That's how I got to this point, is by asking question after question after question. I'd call inspectors, electrical buddies, whoever, look it up on YouTube, try to figure this stuff out. As a homeowner, you can pull your own permit. So if you're up to a little bit of a challenge, it is not that difficult. So just get it done, make it happen, and have a little bit of fun in the process. So I hope this helped. Good luck on your project. If there's anything I can do to help you, other than maybe coming across the country or world to you, If there's anything I can do to help you out, please leave a question in the comment. Don't forget, I'm not an electrician. I should probably say this is for entertainment use only, but it's doable. So good luck with your project. I hope this was helpful. Thank you very much for watching.